Are you plagued with backlashes? Do you want to cast farther? Do you get confused whether you need to adjust the tension knob or the brakes? Don't worry, I'll answer all of your questions and show you how to set up your baitcaster. So the first mistake that I notice a lot of bass anglers make is either adjusting the tensioning knob when they should be adjusting the brakes, or when they should be adjusting the brakes and they're adjusting the tensioning knob. And then on top of that, they're not even adjusting them correctly. First, we're going to talk about the spool tensioning knob. This puts constant pressure on the side of the spool to allow it to slow down naturally without the brake system. There's a wide array of where this thing can be adjusted wrong, and only a small narrow band of where it is adjusted correctly. And usually that is within a half a turn, maybe a quarter of a turn. It's a very, very small band once you find it. If you have your spool tensioning knob too loose, the spool inside of here will rock back and forth and click. If you have it too tight, you can press the spool release button and the bait won't even fall at all. So here's the part where people might get confused on what to adjust. If you're getting a backlash toward the end of your cast, this is the point where the bait is slowing down. Your brakes are not going to help with backlashes at the end of your cast. So you want to tighten down your tensioning knob here, and that's the only force that's going to be applied to your bait, slowing down your spool at the end of the cast. The brakes, all that they do is govern out the max speed of your spool. So how I go about adjusting my tensioning knob is I will have my spool tensioning knob fully loose where I have clicks in the spool itself. I'll keep it going back and forth as I tighten down my knob. Once I feel the clicking go away, if your spool tensioning knob has clicks, I usually go about another couple clicks, maybe 3. If you don't have that, I would adjust somewhere between a quarter and a half of a turn on your knob. Remember, you're going to want to adjust this out on the water and make sure you're not getting backlashes at the end of your cast. And if you aren't getting backlashes at the end of your cast, you may want to loosen it up a little bit until you start to get one and then tighten it back up a click or 2. So now let's move on to the braking system. I always start my braking system off at around 50%. Whether you're using a centrifugal system like me, a magnetic brake system, or some other kind of brake system, start it off at around 50%. You're gonna have to go out on the water, make a few casts, and make some adjustments from there. So if you're casting just fine at 50%, no backlashes whatsoever in the earlier parts of your cast, well, that's good and all, but you may not be getting the maximum distance out of your cast. So I suggest you take and loosen up your braking system just a little bit to the point of where you start to get backlashes on occasion. And that's probably the point where you can get the maximum distance out of your reel. And that's the point where I would like to leave it, because I can always use my thumb to feather out those backlashes as I'm casting. But if you don't like to do that, you can always put a little bit more brakes on there and not have to worry about backlashes at all. So just a reminder, if you have backlashes at the end of your cast, adjust your tensioning knob. If you have backlashes earlier in your cast, adjust your brakes. You will have to adjust your brakes from time to time when you change baits, when you change the weight, when you change the size profile. All of those things change the speed of your cast. Also be aware of the wind. If you are casting with the wind, you may want to loosen your brakes to get a little more extra casting distance. Or if you're casting against the wind, you may want to tighten them up because your speed of your cast is going to be a little less. Before I show you how to adjust your drag, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. I see a lot of bass anglers make this mistake of having the drag set too loose. This can be costing you fish on your hook sets. When you set the hook and a little bit of line comes out, that takes a lot of force off the tip of that hook, and you may not be penetrating the fish's mouth as well as you think you are. This gives the fish an opportunity to shake the hook out because you didn't get in past the barb. Now, if you're worried about breaking a fish off because your drag is set too tight, always remember that you can press the spool release and use your thumb as an immediate drag control. I like to do this a lot when I get a big fish on, just to make sure I'm in full control over the drag and I don't lose that big guy. One final tip on drags is whenever you pick up a new rod, you're going to want to make sure that you make that initial break of that drag. One, to make sure that the drag is set correctly, and two, to make sure the drag isn't stuck. Now that you know how to set up your baitcaster, check out this video on a technique that I guarantee will help you catch more fish. But until next time, see you later, Fishing Fam.